Have you ever just looked at your art and after you've colored it, thought to yourself,
Man, this really sucks. These colors look awful together. Why did I make this like this? This looks so bad, dude. Help me, please.
Then I actually will help you, by the way. Stick around for this tutorial. Before we get into how we choose our colors, first we'll want to know how to utilize the color wheel. And if you have no idea what a color wheel is, then no worries. Chances are that you've probably already seen this image around somewhere before. If you have, then you already have a bit of information on color theory. If we break this down in a simpler way, then you'll see that it consists of the 3 primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. Then the 3 secondary colors, which are made by mixing the primary colors. These colors consist of green, orange, and purple. And then, however you pronounce this,
tertiary colors,
which are in betweens of those. There's many color wheels, but this one is the easiest to understand and simplify and break down and understand a little better. If you found that confusing, then make sure to rewind and pause to take notes. Taking notes helps a lot, and I really suggest you do it. Hue, saturation, and value. Now that we know how the color wheel works, now let's get into some extra stuff. Hue is just a color like blue, for example. You can see this on the most basic version of the color wheel. Saturation is how bright the color is. A desaturated photo has little saturation, and a grayscale photo has no saturation at all. Here you can see me increasing and decreasing the saturation of my piece. Keeping in mind the saturation of your art is pretty important, as for it can change with style and environment. Too little saturation might make your piece appear more flat or dull, but too much saturation might make it look very bright, and some details may be lost within the brightness. But if either of these is how you want your art to look, then that is very much okay. Just make sure you consider the amount of both in which you want it to utilize. Value is how dark or light your colors are. It's good to keep in mind value when creating contrast and when you're shading your piece. How do you check if the value and saturation look okay? You can always put your piece to grayscale to check how well everything reads even with no color. Now that we know some basic terms for colors, we can now make a piece only using a select few of these in our art. I personally like using a lot of colors, but limiting yourself to only a few can help you see if your shape language is good, and if you have a good understanding of color harmony. Let's say I were to use a color scheme where I were to draw Sonic using only 3 colors, without using blue. Then this is a great way to test to see if you can recognize the character still. Did you know that a character with a recognizable design will usually be easier to recognize by the silhouette alone? This should be applied to your character design as well. Some character designers draw the silhouette of their character before they start drawing any other details. This is most likely so they can know how strong the character's shape language is alone before going into too much details. Colors alongside with shapes can show a lot of the character's personality because of what we often associate certain colors with. More on that later though. Complementary colors are colors that are directly on the opposite side of the color wheel from one another. Using complementary colors can help make colors stand out in interesting ways, and it can also help make some colors appear brighter than others. Ever wonder why Sonic is blue and Tails is yellow? The original artist most likely considered how good primary and complementary colors look together. Most of my secondary highlight colors tend to be a complementary color to the character I'm drawing. This is most apparent in my Tails art. Now you may be thinking, how do I choose which colors to use though? Well, to be honest, it's different for everyone. When choosing colors, think about what inspires you though. What do you want to color like? Personally, for me, I like using vibrant colors in my pieces because what influences my art style most are the Sonic IDW comics and Matt Herm's coloring style, which is the colors that worked for the Archie Sonic comics, and IDW ones currently too. Analyzing what colors your favorite artists use, how they use it, and why you like it is really helpful in the process. So take for example my art. You can see the colors I choose tend to be closer to the right side of the color wheel. This is because this is where the colors are most saturated but not too saturated. I like doing this so colors don't clash too much or become overstimulating. Choosing colors is different for everyone. Choosing colors does not have any rules to it at all. Those artists that say not to shade using colors that are just the base with more black in it aren't exactly right or wrong. It might not work for their style, but it can work well in things like, say, shonen anime. Using vibrant colors like mine may not apply to you either, and that is very much so okay. Considering the audience your art is for can be important though. Take for example a show made for kids aged around 3 to 5. Have you ever wondered why these colors are as bright as they are? This is to easier grab the kids' attention since their eyesight isn't as developed yet, but their understanding of saturation is. Ever wondered why My Little Pony isn't as colorful as you thought it was as a kid? That's because your eyes weren't as damaged nor distorted from the sun, but shows aimed towards kids from 7 to 12 or even older might be darker since their eyesight is more developed. That's why series like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 2012 version by the way, is darker. But it's also because of it being based on a comic. So basically, the type of colors you use are just based on preference and art style. However, the main thing I suggest you consider still is the environment and emphasis of emotion. Let's say I want to make a piece that was telling the narrative of a fun beach day. Then I'd likely want to use a lot of yellows or blues to highlight how much fun they may be having, or to highlight the fact that the sun is surrounding them. What do you associate color with? Remember when I said colors and shapes can show a lot of the character's personality because of what we often associate colors with? Well, let's take that into consideration. What do you associate red with? Maybe rage or something like a strawberry? Have you ever noticed a trend within characters that have red as their main color? They tend to be portrayed as more violent or intense or even passionate. Take for example Raph or Knuckles. We often associate red with violence or intensity, which makes sense because red itself is a very intense color and can overtake a piece if used too much. This can often change though. There's characters that are red that are very friendly and approachable, like Clifford or Mickey Mouse. It all comes down to how you use these colors and the context of how you're using it. Now that we've gone over how to choose colors, now it's time to go over how I adjust the colors in my art and how you can too. Before I start shading or rendering, I tend to play around with the base color layer. I explained this in my rendering tutorial video by the way. The main filters I use are color balance. This is the one I play around with the most. You can change the values and how much a certain color has a tint of another color in it. Hue, saturation, and lightness. You can adjust the hue, saturation, and how bright the colors are with this filter. Brightness and contrast. You can darken the piece a bit here. I use this a lot because, as I mentioned earlier, I use a lot of bright colors in my art and they can sometimes be a little bit too bright, and I do not want to be burning anyone's retinas, so sometimes I like to edit the colors to be a little bit more dull, just so I'm not killing anyone with brightness. Now that we've gone over some of the basic concepts and information of color, now let's actually use that information and color our piece. But before we start, I suggest turning off night shift mode if it is dark outside for you, and drawing without a white background, just so you know what the background color is and what color is surrounding your character. I draw with a white background, but I don't suggest it if you're doing a lot of rendering. I personally don't render too much anymore, so I just color with a white background because honestly, my eyes are used to it, but your eyes should not be used to it. Please do not hurt your eyes. I suggest any other color but white, literally just so your eyes are not burning. I also noticed a lot of artists draw their backgrounds before they start to color their piece, so I'm assuming this is because when coloring with a white background that the colors look slightly altered. It's the same as how a bright blue background with a green character might make them blend in too much with the background compared to if the background was something else, like let's say a bright purple or red. I unfortunately one time had to recolor something because I did not notice night shift was on. Now, you may be wondering, Jay, what the heck is night shift? Well, on Apple devices, I have no idea about Android. I am so sorry if it's not on other devices and this is just a skill issue for Apple users or something. Night shift turns on at a specific time at night. It gives a very orange tint to your screen, and this is to protect your eyes and reduce the amount of brightness and blue light you expose your eyes to. This is very helpful if you aren't drawing, and I do suggest you have it on every other time. But having it on when drawing does make your color choices a little off, or very off like it was for me. Please do not be like me, and I really suggest you color better. Be a better person. Color without night shift. Now that you hopefully understand how to choose colors better, go and apply your newfound knowledge into your art. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and if it was, send this to someone else who might find it helpful too. Now, if you don't mind, I have other art stuff to do, so see you in the next video. Bye!